Now we have this nice block of beef tallow. Hello my friends, my name is Rachel. If you're new to my channel, then welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Today I'm going to share how I make homemade beef tallow with a crock pot. It's really simple and easy. Don't be intimidated by it. All you're going to need is a crock pot, beef suets, Redmond's real salts, and purified water. So beef suets is the fat that comes from around the organs of the animal, so it's full of the most nutrients. So I definitely recommend trying to get beef suet if at all possible. Typically local farmers will sell the beef suet trimmings at a really good price. If you're having trouble finding a good quality beef suet, White Oak Pastures is a great source for grass-finished meats, and that's where this beef suet that I'm going to be making the tallow with today is from. I'll put a link down below to White Oak as well as anything else that I use in this video. Anyways, beef tallow is a great oil to cook with. It's a great source of healthy fats. It's a great way to avoid cooking with things like toxic vegetable or seed oils. It's very nutrient dense and easy to make. So let's go ahead and jump right into how I render and purify beef tallow. So I added in my beef suet when it was still partially frozen. Just stick it in the crock pots, and then you'll add about a cup of purified water for every pound of beef suet, but don't overthink it. It's okay if you don't get it exactly right. The water just makes sure that it won't burn. Then you're going to add about a tablespoon of Redmond's real salt for every pound of beef suet that you're rendering, and that'll just help draw out any impurities that might be in the suet. Then you'll just turn the crock pots onto low heat for about 6 to 8 hours. Just keep an eye on it. Every hour or so, I'll just mix up the beef suet as it renders, and this helps it just render more quickly and more evenly. And actually it's best to have ground beef suet or ground fat, just because that will render very quickly in comparison to the larger chunks. But what I did was just wait until it softened, and then I kind of just chopped it up with some scissors to speed up the rendering process. You can also use an immersion blender if you have one. And this is what it looks like when it's rendered down to a point where we're ready to strain it. So the tallow has been rendering in the crock pot for about 8 hours now, and it's looking like it's ready to go ahead and filter out. I have a fine mesh strainer here as well as a metal bowl. This will make it easy to take the tallow out of it after it cools down and hardens. And then I also have a cheesecloth. So basically what we're going to do is put the mesh strainer over the bowl and then cover the mesh strainer with this cheesecloth. That will filter out any impurities in the tallow. And the salt that we put in the crock pot with the water and the beef suets, that helps to draw out the impurities within the suets and kind of separate them from the rendered tallow. And so once we filter that and put it in here, then I'll let it cool, put it in the fridge, and there still will be some water and some liquid at the bottom of the bowl, and that's going to have a lot of the impurities that the salt will draw out. That will all come down to the bottom of the tallow. So at that point, all we'll have to do is scrape off the impurities off the bottom of the block of tallow, and then it'll be ready to go. If you're using the tallow for cosmetic purposes, typically you'll go through this rendering process either twice or 3 times, but for using it for food and for eating, it's totally plenty of purifying just to do these steps one time. This is called the wet method by adding the water to it, and the reason why we added the water to it was just so that the beef suet didn't burn. Makes it a lot easier and just ensures that you don't burn the beef tallow, because I've tried the dry method several times and every time that I've tried it, I've burned the tallow. So this is the way to go. This is Jake. He's gonna help me with just filtering out the tallow. So that's gonna be kind of hot.
Spider-Man gloves.
All right. That's what it looks like. I'm going to see if I can render this down even further tomorrow. And then we've got our big bowl full of tallow that I'm going to put in the fridge. And then I'll show you what I do with it after that solidifies. Okay, so it's the next day and I let the tallow sit overnight in the fridge. And as you can see, I can kind of move it around like this, and the water has sunk to the bottom. So I'm just going to push down on it like this and scoop it out. So now we have this nice block of beef tallow, and you'll see there really aren't a lot of impurities on the actual back of the tallow itself. Front looks like this. So this is a good amount of beef tallow, and then this is the water that kind of caught all of the impurities from the fats in there. So I might scrape a little bit of this off, but honestly it looks good, so I'm just gonna leave it as is, and then I'm going to melt this down in a pot on the stove, and then I'll pour it into jars, and then it'll be good to go. You can keep it at room temperature for a few months, or in the fridge for probably 6 to 9 months, and in the freezer probably indefinitely. This stuff really doesn't go bad. I'm sure you'll probably use it before there's a chance of it going bad. You'll see that this isn't actually like pure white. It has some yellow to it, and the reason for that is because this is grass finished beef suet, and the actual suet, as you probably remember seeing in the beginning of the video, is kind of like a gold color, and that's actually the vitamin A from the cows being grass finished and not being fed grain. It does have some extra vitamins and nutrients being grass finished, so that's pretty cool. You can use this for any sort of cooking. You can eat it just as is. Some people like to do that. So now I'm just going to melt these tallow blocks down into a stainless steel pot on the stove, just on low heat. Once it's melted, I'm just going to pour them into mason jars, and then it'll be done. This tallow will melt down pretty quick on the stove, probably in less than 30 minutes on low heat, and then just pour it into glass mason jars. If you are going to freeze the tallow, make sure not to fill it all the way up to the top. Leave about an inch at the top or the glass will break. But if you're keeping it in the fridge, then you can fill it all the way to the brim if you want. You can see as the tallow starts to harden and solidify, it becomes a lot lighter, so it's really golden here, and then gets a lot lighter as it solidifies. Make sure not to throw away the pieces of fat that you strain out when you're making your tallow. You can make these into crispy cracklings by just sticking this glass container into the oven at like 375 and deep frying them, and then you'll make additional tallow, which is great. I'm all finished with making the beef tallow. It's hardened in the fridge. Actually, when I made the cracklings from the leftover pieces that I strained out, it made almost an entire another jar of beef tallow. All I did with that was just put it in the oven in that glass container I showed you guys at like 375 for around 30 minutes. I just kept an eye on it and waited until I saw that the little pieces of fat were crispy in there. They were kind of like I guess, deep frying themselves in the oven, and I just found it to be a lot less messy and easier to do it in the oven than on the stove, but you could do it on the stove too. These tasted really good. I'm actually thinking about saving them, putting them in the freezer, and then maybe trying to make some carnivore chicken nuggets with them or something like that. I feel like they could work sort of like pork rinds. They're really small, little crispy pieces of beef fat. So yeah, made 3 big jars and then 1 little jar, and I used about 2.5 pounds of beef fat. You could fit more in one crock pot if you wanted to. It's always good to just make bigger batches all at once, but overall it's really simple and really easy to make beef tallow, and it saves a lot of money to make it yourself, and that way you know exactly where the beef fat is coming from. As you guys can see, the grass finished beef tallow has a bit of a gold color to it. Hold on one second. Okay, I just got a jar of not grass finished beef tallow that I made. This was just from beef fat that I got from the store. This is very white, and as you can see, the grass finished fat has a little bit of a gold color to it, and that's from the extra vitamins, and especially the vitamin A that comes in the beef fat from grass finished cows. But if you can't afford to eat grass finished beef and you feel good eating store-bought beef, then that's totally okay. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you end up making beef tallow, let me know how it goes in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will look forward to seeing you guys in another video very soon.